Greetings and welcome to Tanzania Today. My name is Nasa Kingu. This is part two of our discussion on Tanzania's economic diplomacy. Last week, we got a chance to discuss various key issues related to Tanzania's economic diplomacy, on issues of why Tanzania has chosen to place economy at the center of its foreign policy, but also other cross-cutting issues like diaspora engagement, on the issues of regional trade and also environment and climate change. Now we are ready for part two of our discussion on Tanzania's economic diplomacy. Welcome back, and in our today's discussion, we will go to explore issue of Tanzania's economic diplomacy related to Tanzania's new vision of 2050, that is DIRA 2050, but also we'll explore other issues related to gender and also Tanzania's missions, how they have positioned themselves, foreign missions, how they have positioned themselves to help the country to reach its foreign policy objectives. Joining me in the studio, first and foremost, is the man himself in charge of Tanzania's economic diplomacy, Ambassador John Olanga. Welcome to Tanzania Today.
Thank you so much.
But also renowned economic analyst, Dr. Bravios Kayoza. Welcome to Tanzania Today. But also today we are also joined by an expert on issues related to governance and also compliance and business development as well. Hilu Bura, welcome to Tanzania Today.
Thank you.
Ambassador, I would like to start with you. Of course, we had a very interesting discussion last week, but we want to continue on the issue of Tanzania's economic diplomacy, a very key issue to the nation, region, and the world as well. We have on the table DIRA 2050. We want to see how Tanzania's economic diplomacy is in line with ensuring Tanzania do achieve the objectives, also what we expected to transform, the way we expect to transform our economy by the year 2050 here in Tanzania. Is it really in line? Is it going to help the Tanzanian government to achieve that?
Thank you so much. Thank you for the opportunity to come here once again. If you look at the two documents, if you look at Vision 2050, and you look at the revised foreign policy, and especially the emphasis on economic diplomacy, you could see seamless alignment. You could see our foreign policy and the emphasis on economic diplomacy is one of the pillars that are going to be used to ensure we achieve Vision 2050. Because if you look at Vision 2050, what are we talking about? We are talking about creating a $1 trillion economy by the year 2050. That means from around 85 to 88 billion dollars that we are at now, we want to increase it like 12-fold by the year 2050. We are talking about reaching a GDP per capita of 7,000 United States dollars. We are currently at 1,250 or so. It means we are talking about almost a six-fold increase over the next 25 years. We are looking at creating a very export-oriented economy. We are looking at increasing our manufacturing base. Now, if you look at the emphasis on foreign policy and the fact that we have anchored it around economic diplomacy, that is the tool that is going to help our country attract more investments, because we need additional capital to catalyze the local capital we have. That is what is going to help us open up new markets, not only regional but also international markets, both in terms of the volume of the market but also in terms of the numbers of the market. So I'm seeing, simply put, a very seamless alignment between the revised foreign policy and the Vision 2050, and I am sure, looking at the way the foreign policy, not only the document, but also the ministry and the embassies and the collaboration with the private sector, I am seeing, I'm very hopeful that we are going to succeed to contribute to achieve achieving Vision 2050.
Dr. Kayoza, very interesting to have you today as an economic analyst, of course. And of course, let's make this discussion as discussional as possible. So whenever you have something burning, of course, you can just chip in and talk about it. Dr. Kayoza, I would like to get to your reaction to Ambassador's comments, but also as economic analyst, how key is Tanzania's economic diplomacy to the issue of DIRA 2050?
Once again, I'm profoundly honored to humbled to be in this panel. I think Baloza has set the ball rolling in a nice way, and I would like to commend the gallant professionals at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the way you are doing your job, and I think you are making our country proud in matters of economic diplomacy. Let me say the following. I think, yes, as he has elaborated very well, there is an alignment between what economic policy platform is in Tanzania and our objectives as in relation to foreign, in relation to DIRA 2050. But it is more important to understand this from the domestic perspective as well. When you talk about economic diplomacy, it is very important to unleash your economic muscles within, thereby making what we call the hegemony, or making it the hegemonic state in the region. As President Uhuru Kenyatta, when he was in power, and said that economic diplomacy starts with the region and then goes to the continent and then to the globe. Speaking of that, Tanzania, I think, has positioned itself very well. And look at the following. Number one of the economic muscles we talk about in infrastructure, the economics of infrastructure. And Tanzania has I think, managed to create its pace and is continuing to do so. The last few years, Tanzania has launched the great JNH, the Mwalimu Nyerere hydroelectric power, which is very essential because energy is a very important factor when it comes to investment has been talking about, worth of $2.6 billion to $2.9 billion. That's huge. We have recently launched the John Pombe Magufuli Bridge, which will be instrumental in terms of the neighboring countries, Rwanda, Burundi, DRC, and the rest. A few years ago, we launched our SGR, worth of $10 billion US. That is massive. And I remember reading Professor Kagwani, one of the leading public intellectual in Kenya in 2024, when we launched that. He wrote an article titled The Unleashing of the Giant in the Region. And that's very important to look at these infrastructure improvements, and we'll see, of course, later on, how are they critical when it comes to building the economy. The other side of it is, of course, you need human capital, because when all is done and said, one of the things that people will look at, if you're inviting, for example, investment from the rest of the continent, the absorption capacity of that investment to lead to economic growth, meaningful economic growth, you need human capital. And we have done very well, I think, in terms of education, for example. In the last 4 years, for every $100 we have invested in development in our country, we have allocated around $16 US in education. Comparing Tanzania to its peers, it has done very well. We have done so in health. For every $100 we have invested in the last five years, almost $21 US accumulatively has gone into the health sector, and that is important for investment. Now, looking at those things, how will they now replicate when it comes to what he has said in terms of attracting foreign direct investments, attracting technology, and the rest? Three things. One is that you'll be able to attract a lot of capital, and the capital sits at the center when you talk about economic growth, and then, of course, development. Number two is productivity. As we know, our major problem, not only in Tanzania, but in countries of our peers, is that productivity has not been doing very well. In fact, there's a correlation between the dwindling productivity and the economic growth, what I've called GPDism, that we have to correct. And if you have these things, then you're aiming at resorting that. And Number three is growth itself, because to achieve a $1 trillion economy, you need an economy that must be growing. And to grow that, of course, we cannot cheat ourselves that we'll do everything within our borders. We need people outside the country. We need technology. We need some sort of expertise from the rest of the world. And that's what economic diplomacy does. And it is complementing what we are aspiring to do. A footnote on that before I hand over to you. Looking at our history, economic history, one would not fail to remember that the gross value addition, we've been talking about GDP, the gross value addition is always a function of what society learns from other societies. And before we started this show, we had a discussion about the PPPs, for example. It is at the core, it's at the center of gross value addition. And if well implemented, I've read the document of the revised foreign policy. I think if well implemented, we'll be able to capture that, and that will add meaning for accounting in terms of manufacturing, and also in terms of what we call industrialization, so to speak.
So, Doctor, I think you're
so
laying
I'd like to say, to complete my argument, I'd like to say that it is very critical when we talk about economic diplomacy and its benefits, its anticipated achievements. Let's not forget that we are doing enough in the country to make that economic diplomacy be fruitful.
You're laying the foundation right on the issue of Tanzania's economic diplomacy. Hilo, great discussion. Of course, Doctor has touched so many key issues, especially on the area of infrastructure, the way Tanzania has set up itself, of course, to tap into whatever economic diplomacy can offer. I would like, of course, you have been involved in various projects, key projects, I should say, vast experience as well. To you, what's your take on the way Tanzania has started off, or the execution of Tanzania's economic diplomacy so far in relation to what we plan to achieve by the year 2050?
I think definitely Tanzania is positioning itself, or it already has positioned itself in such a strategic point to execute DIRA 2050. And I say that because economic diplomacy is opening doors for partnerships. And like you've mentioned, it's so important that we learn from our partners. So as economic diplomacy opens doors for us, we need to be ready. For example, our company, MECO, is one of the I want to say most fortunate, and I would love to say that we would like to take the lead so that other companies can look up and say, okay, how did they manage? We need to achieve that. So we're really striving hard, and as head of governance and compliance, it's so important that we understand that once these doors are opened, we need to be ready to jump on these opportunities.
What is MECO doing, and how have you seen the flow of capital from outside to Tanzania?
So basically, MECO is a very old, it's the oldest construction company in Tanzania. And we are proud that we are today reforming or introducing a new MECO that is now working with global partners. And like I said, UK Export Finance is now assisting us to execute a road project. So we have a road from Fumba to Fumba Kisauni, and then Makunduchi to Tungu. And it's so important that we realize that this opportunity not only boosts MECO, a lot of people say, MECO is so old. But once you're empowered, once you're enabled, and financially now, UKF has given us an opportunity to bloom.
Do you think these are the results of Tanzania's economic diplomacy?
Absolutely. Once a door is opened, it's upon you now to put your best foot forward and to learn. We need to be sponges and learn from these partners that we're partnering up with. So MECO is very happy to have had the opportunity to link up with UKF, and the structured financing has given us an opportunity to possibly execute a project that we couldn't as a local contractor.
Do you have other areas that I think you have seen a proper execution of Tanzania's economic diplomacy in relation to DIRA 2050, apart from, of course, what you're doing at MECO?
Yes, my experience is in downstream petroleum, and I want to say, without the economic diplomacy, we would not be where we are today, Tanzania. And as much as we are proud of our natural resource, without that partnership, as mentioned, we need the knowledge, we need the technical know-how, we need to go at the pace of everybody else in the world out there, how they're going. So when I look at where we are today, and I've been in the oil and gas industry for over 12 years, we have made strides. Definitely. So with economic diplomacy, I see us going even further, because in energy we have now LNG projects. We're looking to use CNG in our vehicles, in our homes. We're not there yet, but with the economic diplomacy and DIRA 2050, we are going to be a force to reckon.
That must be really interesting for you, Director. These are the results of what you're doing?
Absolutely. Actually, I should say I'm very happy when you see a company like MECO. You know, in our younger days, for those of us who have lived in town, in Dar for long enough, Mwananchi Engineering Construction Company was probably the most famous road construction company that you knew. So now, through partnerships with either through foreign funding and through other partners, now we are able to revive companies like MECO. But what is more important, and from the conversations, when we did the 2001 foreign policy, where we recognized economic diplomacy as an emerging issue, and we started pursuing its potential in some key areas, you will realize sectors that have benefited from economic diplomacy have performed very well. So we now have proof of concept. I'll give you examples of sectors. If you look at the mining sector, the mining boom that we saw from the early 2000s to now, where if you look at the contribution of gold exports, specifically gold, you see, if you remove gold from the export basket of this country, our economy will be shaking. And that is the result of a lot of economic diplomacy efforts to attract investments from Australia, from Canada, and from other parts of the world. If you look at financial services, when you hear numbers announced by the banks like NMB, CRDB, and many other banks, they are talking about multi-billion, hundreds of billions of profits. It's also because of a lot of economic diplomacy efforts that have happened. If you look at sectors like telecommunication, the way that we have talking about productivity, there's a lot of productivity in quite a number of sectors. Going forward, for us to achieve Vision 2050, the efforts will continue in those sectors, but there are some critical sectors that are facilitative to our economic growth. One of it is infrastructure. And also through our strategic location as a country, infrastructure is not only necessary for national economic growth, but also for taking advantage of economic growth that happens outside Tanzania and tapping into our economy. For now, you had on the 15th of this month, where our Prime Minister was in Burundi to launch the construction of the first in Africa inter-country electric standard gauge railway project, the first of its kind in this continent, you see. And I can assure you that's just the beginning. You will see that happening with other countries in that part of the... So that is, now, again, that would not have happened if we did not have that emphasis on economic diplomacy. So infrastructure is one area that I think is, and both transport infrastructure and energy infrastructure, you see. And the fact that now our generation capacity of electricity has more than doubled, I think now the next challenge ahead of us is to ensure transmission not only within the country, but also connectivity with the neighboring countries, so that we can become, and I believe we will become in the next 5 years, a net energy exporter, because of our generative capacity. Once we have other projects like the LNG, etc., our generative capacity is going to be a lot more. Economic diplomacy is what is going to transform agriculture sector. not only through attracting investments in agriculture, but also through opening up markets. But if you look at, even currently, how much agriculture is contributing to our export basket, huge, almost at par with tourism.
Our embassies abroad is up next. And yes, in case you just joined us, this is Tanzania Today, and a very interesting subject on the table today regarding Tanzania's economic diplomacy. And in the studio is the man himself in charge of Tanzania's economic diplomacy, Ambassador John Olanga, of course, and a renowned economic analyst here in Tanzania, Dr. Kayoza, and also Hilu Bura, who is an expert on issues of governance, but also with vast experience being involved in various projects here in Tanzania. Ambassador, let's talk about a very interesting subject. Of course, I'm sure the rest will have a lot to talk about, our foreign missions. How are they, of course, if the whole issue were a vehicle, I don't know, these will be engines or fuel, I'm not sure. I think we cannot do without them. How are they structured and strategically positioned to ensure that they support the government's efforts on the issue of course, attracting investors and to the national development through economic diplomacy?
Beautiful. What we have seen already is a systemic transformation of the role that our missions abroad are playing. Because typically, the traditional interpretation of the role of our missions, ambassadors, high commissions, is representation. And especially representation in political discussions and here and there. Now, as you've rightly said, you could see they are turning themselves into engines or catalysts of economic growth in terms of when they are there, and I can tell you they are keeping us busy, looking at opportunities to attract investment to come into the market, opportunities to look for markets in those countries, opportunities to attract tourists or to promote tourism, opportunities to look for scholarships, to look for jobs. For example, currently when we are dealing with embassies in the Middle East, always they come to us, there are opportunities for jobs for Tanzanians to come. If you're dealing with our missions in the Far East, always looking for opportunities for investors, even in the Middle East. As early as next week, we are having multi-billionaires coming from Qatar, coming to Tanzania, looking for opportunities for investment. So we are seeing that systemic transformation, that our embassies and our ambassadors and high commissioners, when they are sent there, their number one briefing is around economic diplomacy. Their regular engagement with us is around economic diplomacy. I was just a couple of days ago in Zambia, the border between Zambia and Tanzania, and we had a whole 3-day conversations actually with the government of Zambia to talk about bottlenecks that hinder trade and movement of trade between Tanzania and Zambia. And it was all about economic diplomacy. What do we need to do? What new infrastructure? So that systemic shift is already happening. The orientation of not only the ambassadors and high commissioners, but also the staff in the missions is completely different. That every one of them is geared towards looking for opportunities to attract more opportunities to our country.
Dr. Kayoza, of course, you're as an economic expert, but also an outsider. You're observing this one from outside, of course. Do you see that systematic shift happening, helping the government, of course, to the national growth?
I see it happening. And when you're assessing that from the economic point of view, we look at the three main things. One is philosophy. Number two is ideology. Number three is strategy. Now, if you look at the philosophy of what Tanzania is persuading, it's very clear that we would like to have a nation that is not only growing economically, attracting capital from the rest of the world, but protecting our inner values. And I think the president has had almost 4 speeches when it comes to protecting the inner values of that, because that's where the missing link has been. Number two, if you look at the ideology, of course, Tanzania has not changed. There's a way we view the world. Of course, we are not stuck in the ideologies of the 20th century of the left and the right, but we are very clear that this is what we want in terms of actually revamping, rejuvenating what has been ailing in terms of the factors, macroeconomic factors for the economy. Number three, I think the strategy is very well. We are saying that we get what you want to get from any place in the world without, of course, outlying. But in doing so, we need to be smart enough, and I think we are doing that. Only that we need to, I think, to put more emphasis in the following. Number one, I think there's a need of being careful with what Morrison, the former Prime Minister of Australia in 2019, called negative globalization, because at some point you may be lured to believe and be attracted to the benefit that come with that. But of course, from inner side of what is happening, what we have seen, of course, for the last 30 years, when the world started celebrating political liberalization and on the other side, economic globalization, we have seen the things eating up these small countries, these developing countries. And we need to be very, very very keen when it comes to strategy on that. But number two, I think it's very important also to understand very well how the global economy is working, because you could see that these big countries have decided that they will control the surplus of the world regardless of the economies regardless of the economies getting surplus. What they're saying is that, okay, it doesn't matter who produces surplus. From Paul Volcker, who was once the governor of the chairman of the Federal Reserve in the United States. And what is happening in that is that we have the bubble economy that is much vested in the stock markets, and then create from the natural resources of the rest of the world that is creating those bubbles. And what happens is that these countries are always buying the American debt, for example, from the Wall Street, without really these countries understanding that a certain thing is happening. And then when we come back in these countries, we find that economies are growing so fast, but you are not seeing the results. Investments are booming. You're not seeing people getting out of poverty. And I think that is one thing that we have to be clear. What are the sectors that we should be concerned with? And the question should be, where are our people really? And I think there's a way in which if you read the DIRA 2050, if you see our gallant sons are doing in the foreign ministry, I think you could see that's happening. But I think I would like to see them doing more of that from the strategic point of view. Lastly, I think it's also very important to see, to be aware of what the emerging, you could call the creative, the disruptive innovations. For example, the AI thing that will be so instrumental in the labor market. As much as it will affect the whole globe, as we stand today, but I think it is so dangerous, so funny to these economies of ours. Now, there should be a balance between what you want to attract from the rest of the world and what you want to break in terms of labor capital, because the ripple effect is that you will have, when you look at the labor capital ratio, you find that you need a lot of capital, for example, to produce one job because of the sectors we have concentrated in. And this should be the work of our foreign policy, of our foreign ambassadors and foreign mission, to make sure that we get the gist of what is important. But overall, I like the gusto with which Balozi, you are doing this thing.
Hilu, I want to get to you. Of course, we will discuss on the issue of gender as well. But of course,
I know it's a bit impolite to interrupt before the lady speaks. But I just want to respond to one important point he's raising. And I agree with your line of argument, and it is true. One thing you have to also appreciate that when you talk about foreign policy is a reflection of national priorities at the international level. And that's why I said, if you look at what we have done over the last 25 years and the success we have achieved in some specific sectors, we have already a proof of concept that economic diplomacy works. Now going forward, and to agree with what you're saying, at national level, for example, the sector that we all know that is going to put a permanent dent on poverty in Tanzania is agriculture. If we can achieve transformation in agriculture, Unfortunately, if you look at most of the other sectors, fortunately, if you look at most of the other sectors, are growing above 8, 9%. Agriculture still now grows at around, now it has grown from 3 something to now 4 something percent. But you already know the government has a target of achieving a 10% growth in agriculture sector by the year 2030. So the mission 10, they call 10/30, it means we in Foreign Service, in collaboration with the Ministry of Agriculture, should work very hard to ensure we increase productivity in agriculture. And one of the reasons we've not been able to increase the needed productivity in agriculture is because still technology has not been attracted, large-scale capital into agriculture has not been attracted, and of course also access to market. So I completely agree. The seamless alignments that I'm talking about, that alignment that I'm talking about, is because we in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, our missions are saying, what do we need to prioritize now? And it is true. I am very optimistic that in the next 5 years, we'll be reaching 10% growth in agriculture.
Okay, Doctor, I think let's move now to Hilo. Your reaction, of course, you've been the testimony of what Tanzania's economic diplomacy can actually offer, and Director here must be really happy. But I would like to get your comment regarding Tanzania's foreign missions. Are they doing their job?
Absolutely. I can share, let me say, an experience that MECO had an opportunity to travel to the UK recently. It was in May, and I was also a member of the panel. And what I can say is that with the economic diplomacy, our foreign missions focus is purely on achieving what companies need, what locals aspire to achieve. And there's a lot. It's very complex when you're approaching a country, an entity. You need to understand so many aspects. So with that foreign mission and the focus on economic diplomacy, for sure you can align, and I can tell you we had a standing ovation just from a presentation in a panel, because it's so important not only you give the detail from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, but the reality on the ground, the local insight. Like you said, what do we need? Because we don't want to lose ourselves in the process. And it was interesting because when I spoke, fortunately I also studied in England, primary school. But that was merely because my parents moved there to study through a scholarship. My dad's a pediatrician. And when I gave my story, you know, it's something that the UK businesses could relate to. But I also felt it was an opportunity to talk about the opportunities so that UK businesses, this was in London, to step up and not feel afraid to penetrate the market and see where they can team up with different companies, because they have a real, it's not just from the book, it's not this is what the regulation or the procedure we've put. So with our foreign missions, focusing on the economic diplomacy agenda, I truly believe many more companies will come up here and give their testaments and share the achievements. So I'm very pleased, and I can speak for the UK foreign mission, but also as a company, as a local company. You know, MECO, we look to go to other countries, and we are not afraid because we know we have our foreign missions that can guide us to go in the right place and to achieve what we wish to achieve on the ground.
That's very much interesting. I'm sure Ambassador has something to add, but I would like to, yes.
Go ahead.
Yes, I would like to ask you about the issue of gender, the way Tanzania's economic diplomacy has incorporated the issue of gender. Of course, male-dominated diplomacy is changing. You have any comment on that?
Yes, of course. You look at Tanzania today, our leader is a strong female, Dr. Samia Suluhu Hassan. That is a testament of where we are today and where we were in the past. And like I said, I've had the opportunity to travel the world. However, my heart was always to come home. And I can tell you, my experience working in, I talked to you before the show, in downstream petroleum as a female, a male-dominated field, we have come a long way. I see more women in leadership. I see more women in strategic positions that need to step up even more for us to give opportunity for young girls that look up to us and say, yes, one day I also want to be in that position. So Tanzania has come a long way, and I truly believe that we are on the right track and we are more inclusive, and even DIRA 2050 we can achieve if we focus on executing and also making it inclusive. Women, we have a sixth power, you know, we have a lot of power to achieve.
Speaking about the sixth power, I'm tempted to ask you, of course, there must be a lot of young girls watching right now. Do you have a message for them, especially on this particular area? I know, Dr. Ambassador, you have something to add, and Doctor as well, I'll get back to you. But this one is very interesting. What would be your message? As the government, of course, is laying the right foundation on issues related to economic diplomacy.
My message to a young Tanzanian girl watching today would be to go for it. And Ambassador Ulanga had mentioned something before we started. Nothing is impossible. If you put your heart in it, nothing is impossible. I'm proud of what I've achieved today, but let me tell you, though, it wasn't like I confidently just walked. I've had mentors. I've had to look for the right information. I can say a young Tanzanian girl today, I was that young Tanzanian girl one day. Maybe I've had the opportunity through my parents at some point, which I have no control over. But even that young Tanzanian girl sitting in a village, my father is from a place called Haidom, and I look at the young girls who look up, like I said, to us. You can achieve whatever you want. When I speak to that young girl and say that positive word, that with the economic diplomacy and with our Vision 2050, it's upon you. We have to stop saying we don't have the opportunity, we don't have the direction. Look for that opportunity. Seek the direction. Even in university, you have an opportunity to attend a summit, a conference, go. Anything is possible, and young lady, you can achieve whatever you want.
Great message. The government is doing its job, of course. So the question is, are you? Should I start with Ambassador or Doctor? I think let's start with
you want to start with me?
of the whole issue. Yes.
What's the question?
Your reaction.
I wanted to react to one or two things both of them say. You talked about skills.
Yeah.
And the importance of skills in catalyzing our economic growth, which I completely agree. If you listen to, or when you listen to what Hill was saying, there's something she was saying without saying. One of the value add in economic diplomacy is to what extent are we exposing our people in international scene. And investors and other collaborators become extremely comfortable when they engage with Tanzanians that know Tanzania at heart. Their hearts are in Tanzania, but they're also exposed. So when you talk about skills, it's a combination of your education background, your exposure, which also impacts your attitude, your work ethic, you see. And that's why even in economic diplomacy, issues of international scholarships, helping people getting international jobs, not because we want to send people away, but we want to expose people in international environment. Even when you talked about diaspora, why do we value diaspora as part of the revised foreign policy? Because we know they bring back the combination. And if you look at countries like China, Japan, if you study what they did at the point of their most dynamic economic growth, was to send their people all over the world and then bring them back to spur economic growth. I think that's important. Number two, on gender. It's true, the change of guards at the top and having a female president. To be honest, from economic diplomacy perspective, it also provided a very positive impetus and that change of tone. And even that, when you have our president in these international conversations, much as she might be a minority, but her voice fills the room. The voice of a lady fills usually she's alone, but her voice fills that room. And it really helps us to open doors. But also look at some of the strategic missions. If you look at the biggest economy in this world currently is the United States. Who is our head of mission there? Dr. Elsie Kansa, a lady.
Yes.
And she's really transforming the relationship we have with. One of the reasons, if you look at the recent introduction of new tariffs by the United States, Tanzania was not mentioned. And do you know, they say Tanzania was not touched in that recent announcement because of the efforts that Dr. Elsie Kansa did. If you look at other big economies like the Netherlands, we have Ambassador Caroline Chipeta. You see, a lady. You see, if you look at Vienna, we have Ambassador Naomi Aziz. So we could see that gender. If you look at some of the African countries, Zimbabwe, Ambassador Susan Kaganda. If you also go to Malawi, Ambassador Agnes. So you could see, much as, of course, we are not yet 50-50, but over the last couple of years, we can see gender parity is coming, slowly. But even the few that are there, they are really movers and shakers to ensure. And not only at the heads of mission, but also you have a lot of females at either heads of chancery, or commercial or trade attaches, whom we work with regularly, and they are really transforming things or the relationships that we have with those countries.
Doctor?
Yeah, in fact, I wanted to add what she said, but before that, many kudos for what you are doing. I think many young ladies must be impressed with what you are doing. Two issues on womenomics. In economics today, we have that thing, that you can't run a proper economy today in economic management without having that aspect of it. And womenomics must be vibrant. So she's right when she talked about the roles, and Ambassador Ulanga has taught us how, from the leadership perspective, how women are faring, and that's beautiful. Two things that we normally talk off the cuff, and I think they have to come to the limelight, is that if you look at the capital formation in this country, there is a big disparity between men and women. In fact, capital formation at the individual level, from the men perspective, it is 6 times higher than women. And then you're talking about in towns. In villages, it is 9 times higher. And that disparity is huge. And of course, you cannot develop the economy if you have that disparity. Number two is we talked about productivity. And again, this is not good news again. If you come to per capita productivity, is that you have, again, the huge disparity. In fact, when you look up, despite the fact that there are many in productive sectors, but that growth of productivity from the individual perspective, it is 16 times lower. It is one of the worst in the world. And therefore, this is the thing that we have to look at. And I'm tempted to agree that if you make economic diplomacy work properly, I think it has a role to play in terms of the domestic issues, particularly in womenomics. But I would like also to talk about the companies, because she talked about the companies. And this has to also, I think, be molded in a way that it will lead to, not per se the trickle down, because I don't like trickle down economics, but in a way that there should be a proper relationship, as much as there's causality between, for example, the foreign direct investments and the domestic direct investments, there should be also the correlation on the increment of these companies. What we have seen for the last 30 years is that there has been an inverse relationship. If you look at the numbers, whenever you have the flow of foreign direct investments in huge numbers, you have the slowdown of the direct domestic investments. But there is a turnaround this time. That's why I started by congratulating the gallant sons of the foreign affairs. I think it is happening from there, maybe. Sons and daughters. Hey, great, sons and daughters. Because I know my good friend Ambassador Mindy is praying the one of the ways.
And a lot of others.
And I know others. So I wanted to say about this investor relationship. For the last 30 years, there's been investment. In the last 5 years, what we have seen, if you look at those numbers, a 2% increase in foreign direct investment has led to a 0.7% increase of the domestic direct investment. It was in the negatives before. And I think, I don't know if you're Ambassador, you are clearly, I think if you are, I don't want to use this word, if you are keen in these numbers, because that's very important. The moment you don't touch at those numbers, what they signal, you may end up, blurring everything that you want to be doing. And in that space now, it is one of the ways to accommodate a lot of Tanzanians within. When you talk about the employment factors, because at the end of it all, when economic diplomacy works, when investments increase, jump, when you have technology coming in, when you improve efficiency, which is at the core of what we do with the rest of the world, then it has to touch in an immense way the employment factor. And I see economic diplomacy as a major instrument in sorting that problem, because, of course, it has been eating up to our GDP. So that's what I wanted to add when she talked about the companies, the relationship between what comes in and how does it contribute to the domestic economy.
Okay, that's very interesting. Of course, I know you have something to add, of course, as we're coming towards the end of our program, but back to you, the man in charge. I'll get back to her.
Okay. I'm not sure if
you have something to add.
No, not to add per se, but in 30 I'm not sure if you want to go into economics class. I'm not sure if there's correlation. I'm not sure you're saying there is direct correlation between FDI and domestic capital growth. I'm not sure. But what you're saying, and I agree, we need to monitor while we are attracting FDI, what we should also monitor the growth of domestic investments.
The short DDIs, yes.
But so I'm not sure you're saying domestic investment or domestic direct investment is either growing slowly or negative growth because of foreign direct investment.
The good thing Ambassador said, let's not go into the economic class, but I think from my observation, there is a causality. At a certain point in the history of our economy, foreign direct investments have been necessarily leading to the decrease of DDIs. One is because of the sectors that have been driving the economies. Number two is because of the logic of the international economy, because always the logic of international economy has not been matching with the logic of the internal economy. And this has led to poor growth, you may say, of the internal companies. Okay. When you want to say, for example, in the DIRA, we're saying we need to have a self-reliant economy. I think one of the factors of building a self-reliant economy is that you have to make sure that companies, the internal companies, the domestic business people are thriving, not at the expense of the foreign investments, but now this should be complementing that.
Perfect. Okay, I think that one is clear to Ambassador. I'll give you time, of course, because we're coming towards the end of our program, to conclude on that particular matter. But also, maybe for 1 minute, if you could, of course, assure the viewers, so many people watching the program right now, we're living in the era where people are privatizing win-win situation, WIFM era. What's in it for me? Why do you want to tell the rest of the world that Tanzania is the right partner, whatever it comes, for prosperous region in the world?
Thank you. So one, the beauty that Tanzania has, we had an experiment of economic growth model that to a large extent solely depends on domestic direct investment, almost. And that experiment was not as successful as we would have wished. And then we've opened up, and we have seen the sectors that have benefited from FDI have actually performed much better, not only for the foreign investor, but also for the local investor. I'll give you just one example. I used to be the chair of Serengeti Breweries, which was a company purely started by locals. and it was growing. But the moment they could attract foreign capital, and now you have shareholding of East African breweries, but basically it is Diageo, which is a UK company. The performance of that company, and this is just one example, you can look at many, went. And even not only the revenues, but even the dividends given to the local shareholders. And we can give you a lot of many examples if you look at mining sector, if you look at banking sector, if you look at. So much as we might need to discuss on the causality, but I am not sure you can blame the decline in DDI on FDI. But let's have that conversation, we'll be happy to learn. But to conclude, Tanzania is a country that everyone should be. If you are an investor, if you want to bet on a country that is going to be an economic giant of this region and of this continent, it is Tanzania, for 3 or 4 main reasons. One, appropriate policy environment. And when you talk about appropriate policy environment, from the political leadership that you have, the tone from the top, the policy environment that supports that tone from the top, is the most conducive that you can have, you see. But also, when you add political peace and stability and things of that sort, this is the country to be. Number 2, appropriate infrastructure, supportive or facilitative infrastructure. You see, the investments that we have done, and we have given examples of the bridges, the energy projects, the ports, the airports, and many other projects, that the standard gauge railway. An investor needs to come to a country that is easy to move and you can easily power your factories. Number 3, people. The skills that our people, the young, when you talk about the youth and the investments that we have done in education, from primary school to university education, but also the other types of vocational or technical training. You have the right skills, the right attitude. I've seen people from outside Tanzania that are saying one of the things that we want to employ Tanzanians is because we can trust them. They're not fraudulent, or you see, and things of that sort. You see, so these are some of the, and then of course we all know the strategic location that we have as a country gives us not only access to Tanzanians, access to the regional market, but also, remember the point you talked about. The big countries want to control the access, but with the multipolar world that we are, you see, we have access to the African continental free trade area, we have access to the markets in the East, markets in the Middle East, and markets in the West. So we are the country to be, and trust me, not because I'm a Tanzanian, not because I work for the foreign ministry, but as an independent analyst, the next 25 years are something to watch. And we are going to be an economic giant.
Hill, you have experienced this one at first hand. What would you say, what would you tell the world that Tanzania is a must-be and a strategic partner when it comes to bilateral and multilateral cooperation for prosperous world and the region as well? For 30 seconds.
30 seconds, oh, pressure's on. To make it very simple, I want to speak as a Tanzanian. I know Ambassador spoke as an analyst, but from a personal point of view, as a Tanzanian that was born here, bred overseas, but always wanted to come back home. And I say that because I always had beautiful memories of my country. Our people, so hospitable, so nice, always somebody will greet you. But then also my experience coming back with my family, and also going through my career and looking at the opportunities in Tanzania. The opportunities are endless. I think Ambassador Ulanga has just touched a brief of what you can come and achieve in Tanzania. But also, I think it's so important as you look to enter a country to do business, that it's a partnership that you're forming. It's not just business. It's a partnership, and it's a place where you are comfortable, you're happy, and you enjoy. Tanzania is a beautiful country, not because it's my country, but because it is beautiful. And there's so much to see, so much to learn, and people, beautiful people. So I would say never miss out the opportunity when you have that opportunity to visit and also invest in Tanzania.
I'm sure message well delivered and sent. Doctor, in conclusion, 30 seconds. I know you have a lot of things to say. How would you sum up this one?
One, let's keep on doing the good work we have been doing on Samionomics. I think Samionomics has delivered a lot. In terms, for example, of exports, she came into power when our exports were in the tune of 8 billion. It is now 17 billion. Let's remind our viewers that according to the African Reimagined development, it has shown that it is among the top 6 countries that have turned around the after COVID on the continent. And that's a very good thing. They have talked about travels. I think tourism has done very well from 800 million to 3.9, almost 4 billion today. I think let's continue doing the good work with Samionomics. Number 2, as we talked before we started the show, PPPs should be the pillars. PPP should be the pillar of our economic growth and everything that we do from the economic diplomacy perspective.
Great comments. I must thank all of you for very interesting comments, of course, and discussing how, of course, Tanzania's economic diplomacy is on the right track with our Vision 2050. Thank you very much, Director.
Thank you so much.
John Ulanga, of course, Director of Tanzania's Economic Diplomacy at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and East African Cooperation. Our analysts as well, Dr. Kayoza, thank you very much for being with us here today. And Hilu as well, thank you very much for being with us here today. We get great insight from you regarding gender, and you have been the testimony, putting a smile on Ambassador's face. The things are working.
Yes, definitely.
Yes, his job is very safe. Yes. So today's discussion has been about Tanzania's economic diplomacy in relation to Vision 2050. We looked at that, and also Tanzania's foreign missions, how they are strategically positioned to support the government of Tanzania in its endeavors to ensure that we achieve our ambitious transformations by the year 2050. Interesting comments, and make sure if you have missed any part of this particular program, you can watch this program anytime on our online platforms, that is at TVC Online through YouTube. My name is Nasa Kingu. Thank you very much for watching, and have a good day.